It's IB Nation Sports Talk. We are locked and loaded for a jam-packed Tuesday edition of the show. He's Ryan Roberts checking in. Got some recruiting talk we're going to have with Ryan. And after that, Hannah Hidalgo, Notre Dame sensational rising sophomore now, All-American point guard. I'll be talking to her. We got a lot to talk about. She'll talk a little bit about Olivia Miles. We had Olivia a few weeks ago, and now we've got a Hannah. So dynamic duo going to be playing together this year. Great to have them both on the show.
Sean, you're so impressive, man. How are you getting these great guests? And I keep having to lead off with like the huge headliners after I get off too, man. It's just hopefully I can warm people up. I feel like I'm going to let people down again, but here we are.
Ryan again. Roberts is the undercard. Well, I mean, you've got a lot. I mean, don't sell yourself short. You've got a lot of stuff that people want to hear about too. So I mean,
I'm trying, man.
I think you hold your own for your punching weight.
I hope that people appreciate the content and the information because, Sean, every single day I feel like I'm just getting older and older. I mean, we were talking about heartburn before we started the show, but also like an eighth grader just got offered by Notre Dame yesterday. Never seen that before. And then, you know who was on campus yesterday? I forgot to tell you this one. Tom McGlinchey, Mike McGlinchey's little brother, was on campus yesterday.
I just saw that on the site. I read that article today. That is crazy. Now, how old is what class is he, though?
He's 2026, so he'll be a rising junior this year. Yeah, he'll be a junior this year. Yeah,
man.
High school quarterback, dude. 6'6", like 225 pounds, but Notre Dame worked him out as a tight end yesterday at camp. So he's got like Duke and Boston College early offers. So we'll see what happens.
All right. I mean, it's always great to hear like those names when just like with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, obviously his younger brother, pretty, a lot of stuff going on with him right now. Man. So, it's cool. I like the brother combos. You love to see it.
It's so cool. And Jalen Smith was on campus to hang out with them too, man. It's these official visitor weekends are always so cool because it's kind of like a blast from the past a little bit. Cause I mean, like you said, I feel like especially recently with the not necessarily legacies of Notre Dame. I know like Jerome Bettis Jr. is committed in the 2025 class, but I mean, Notre Dame has been recruiting so many former NFL players' sons, right? So, I mean, you're getting some big high-profile names on campus recently. And then again, I mean, Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, 2025 linebacker at IMG Academy that you're talking about. I mean, there's his brother Jeremiah, who crazy. I don't know if you heard this one, Sean. That was the first time that Jeremiah and Nathaniel, who are brothers, were ever on campus at Notre Dame at the same time. First time ever that happened. Yeah, it was only Nathaniel's second time on campus in general. The first time was in January for an unofficial. Obviously, his brother wasn't there. First time the brothers were on campus together, which is just those kind of stories, I think, is what the coolest part of recruiting because you just get a lot of those little cool backstories, I think, in these conversations.
That's amazing. I feel like now, like with NIL and everything, like it feels like maybe, if you've got a younger brother, there's a better chance of getting him here, I guess, even if he's not being recruited, because obviously when Jeremiah was still playing, his brother was too young to sort of be actively recruited, I guess, at this point, just with the age difference that they've got. But it feels like maybe there's a greater chance that you get little brother to campus at some point with NIL and just all those opportunities now.
I think so. I mean, we talk about the legacy conversations, obviously, but I think for Nathaniel specifically, I think it's a really cool multiple perspective process of his visit because, like, when Jeremiah was on campus, NIL wasn't a thing yet, right? It's at least the legal part of the NIL. So, I mean, he's coming to campus and he's just giving Nathaniel his perspective on being a Notre Dame football player, like just first and foremost, and then the admissions, the coaches, the current players, like they can fill in as far as the NIL stuff and what's it like to be on campus now and some of the new facilities, like just the multiple perspectives that a player like Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng gets with his brother there, with Jalen Smith there. I think it's just a really good meshing of as much information as you possibly get, because I mean, I talk to recruits all the time, man. And I know Notre Dame does this, Sean, where they're like, don't rush this decision. Like, if you want to take visits, go take visits, right? Like, don't commit early. Just go take visits, because too much information. There's no such thing as too much information in the recruiting world, man. To make a great decision, let's know what the academic background is, what's your major going to be, and what's the program like at a specific school. What is the playing time potential? Like, what's the depth chart look like currently? Who are the coaches that are going to be locked in potentially for a long time? Like, there's so many different layers to picking a school that I think that a guy like Nathaniel, who did not rush his decision, he got to go on campus and just really develop a deeper understanding for what did my brother experience, but also what am I going to experience, right? Like, well, how has it changed since he was in South Bend? I think it's a really unique kind of situation for a guy like Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng.
It's actually changed quite a bit just in the few years since Jeremiah has been here. So it's amazing when you think about just how much it's changed.
Seriously.
We're going to talk about a couple receivers who are going to be visiting this weekend, making official visits. But there's actually a few guys on campus right now, some rare kind of midweek visits, including 2 other wide receivers right now, right?
Yeah. So it's very unique because Notre Dame obviously started the official visits this past weekend. We had obviously constant updates about Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, Boateng, Madden Faremo, and then Jameer Joseph, the defensive back out of New Jersey. And of course, we're talking about just 2025 kids. That's who's taking official visits right now for people that don't follow recruiting. That right now, literally last night, these kids are getting on campus because their officials technically start today. The 2 wide receivers you're talking about, Dylan Robinson out of Bonita in the state of California, out of Laverne. And then also you have a very interesting in-state wide receiver from Fishers, Indiana, and John Anthony Hall coming to campus as well, who's a multi-sport star for Fishers High School in Indiana. And then also probably the top, well, he's a very important prospect, but in my opinion, he might be the best overall player of the uncommitted players that are still on the board here. Jadon Blair's on campus right now as well. The star safety out of the state of North Carolina, 6'4.5", 190 pounds, being comped a lot to Kyle Hamilton on message boards and just kind of general Notre Dame conversation, right? So yeah, you have a very important trio that is visiting Notre Dame today and into Thursday morning is kind of when those visits technically end, usually a 3-day visit there. And I think that this is really, it's interesting, Sean, because for people that don't follow, like, so the weekend visitors, technically their official visit starts on Friday, but usually they come in the night before, right? So they can really experience everything. And a lot of the kids usually come from a little bit of distance. So these official visitors are going to be here on Friday that we'll talk about. They're coming in Thursday nights. For the wide receivers and Jadon Blair that are on campus right now, they're going to leave. They came on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning. So you are literally going to get the 4 wide receivers on the board right now for Notre Dame in like a 24-hour period on campus, right? In a little bit of a situation. Because I know a lot of people have kind of portrayed it as like you're going to get all your targets on campus in like a week span. I'm like, no, not actually. It's like a day and a half span. You're going to have all 4 of those kids on campus, which is pretty wild to think about. That's going to be the greatest part about this week and this weekend. There's been a lot of panic and a lot of questions about what does the wide receiver class ultimately look like in 2025. We'll have great clarity on that after the weekend because we'll have the 2 visitors that are right here right now, John Anthony Hall and Dylan Robinson, and then like obviously the 2 that we're going to talk about this weekend as well. And we'll be able to understand how they're meshing with Notre Dame and if they ultimately will pick them.
All right, before we talk to them, as the room fills up, go ahead and smash that like button, if you would. Pretty please, hit the like button. Okay, so Derek Meadows, Tanook Hines, both visiting this weekend, the 2 big names on the board. Let's start with Meadows. What is kind of the latest coming into his official this weekend?
Yeah, and I'll have a visit preview on this probably the next couple of days. I actually just finished it, but I don't know when it's going to go live on Irish Breakdown. But Derek Meadows, 2025 wide receiver out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Bishop Gorman, listed between 6'5" and 6'6", depending where you look. And right now he's about 200 pounds. This is the height, weight, speed dude that is on the board right now. And he's been a guy that Notre Dame has been high on for well over a year. I mean, literally he camped at Notre Dame, not this offseason, last offseason, earned his offer. At that point, his offer list was very small, Sean. Like, it was not a big list. And for several months, it was a Notre Dame Washington battle. That was the battle. They were duking it out with obviously Kalen DeBoer and then the wide receiver coach that's now with him at Alabama as well for Derek Meadows. And when they left Washington, for a minute there, it was like Notre Dame's the option. Like, that's it. Like, it was a Notre Dame Washington battle. The Washington coaching staff left. You're like, okay. Then Derek Meadows went down to battle Miami, and everybody saw about their shot. They saw him dunk on someone and win above the rim and run like a gazelle. Like, and then the SEC came in, right? Alabama came in. Michigan also came in from the Big Ten equation as well, but Tennessee and all these SEC schools finally start coming in. And now things have gotten and have been cloudy now for several weeks, if not a couple months at this point. So the best way I can put it is it has been trending away from Notre Dame. And people take that as in Notre Dame has done something wrong. No, I don't think Notre Dame has done anything wrong in this situation. It is just quite simply as easy as put as this. Alabama with Kalen DeBoer, who's I would say is probably his number one school right now. They have a better history recently of producing NFL wide receivers, and Kalen DeBoer has a better history recently of producing better wide receivers than Notre Dame has over recent history. Like, it's just the facts. You can't dispute that. So that is very attractive to Derek Meadows. I don't think Notre Dame did anything wrong. I think it's trending away from him because I just think that Notre Dame has stagnated a little bit and other schools are trending forward, right? They're trending forward at this point. So this visit, honestly, Sean, like it's a make it or break visit for Notre Dame. It really is. Like, I don't think that Notre Dame is going to end up getting Derek Meadows. I've been fully transparent about that for several weeks at this point. But if they are going to have a chance at him, it's because they knocked this visit out of the park. Like, they have to kill this visit to have any type of chance with Derek Meadows in the end.
I mean, it sounds like it. Just the way, you talk about the way things are trending, and you talk about that DeBoer staff. I mean, obviously, they had a Dunze, he goes high.
They just had 3 wide
Top
receivers
10.
drafted in the first 4 rounds of this last class. Obviously, a Dunze number 9 to Chicago, but then you have Jalen Polk go second round in this past draft to the New England Patriots. And then I forget who drafted Jalen McMillan, who I think Notre Dame fans probably remember. Notre Dame was recruiting him heavy when he was coming out of high school as well. Jalen McMillan goes in the 4th round as well. So your number 3 receiver from last year went in the 4th round, Sean. Like
That's insane.
I don't know how else to quantify that. And for a kid that wants to go to the NFL, obviously, you can't blame Derek Meadows for that being attractive to him. You just can't blame him.
So 6'5", 200 with speed. I mean, that like, I think that's pretty coveted no matter where you are. That's seems like a pretty important kind of guy to have around, right? Like, just he's mold, whether it's him or not.
Well, and I would and definitely want to talk about that because I mentioned Dylan Robinson that's visiting right now from Bonita High School in Laverne, California as well. Notre Dame needs more of that mold, Sean. Like not historically, but in like recent history, the boundary receiver position has been very huge for Notre Dame, right? When you think about Chase Claypool and Miles Boykin and those types of guys, your most productive wide receivers have traditionally been your boundary receivers. When Notre Dame has had any semblance of a good passing offense, it's been your boundary receivers. We know just last year what happened when Jane Thomas got banged up, Deion Colsey's out. You start losing these boundary type wide receivers, guys with a little bit of size that you could throw out there. And Notre Dame's offense just became so vanilla and so predictable and wasn't able to spread the field at all. Like, it was because you just didn't have enough of that type. And you're correct. Derek Meadows is so heavily valued because he is a little bit of a boomer bust prospect in the sense of he is not overly productive right now. He is a kid that needs a lot of technical refinement, but I can't teach 6'5" plus who also last offseason, I don't know what he's running now, but last offseason, he ran at 6'5" and whatever he was at Notre Dame. At that point, he ran 4.5 flat. Like, he can move, man. He's probably a 4.4 something athlete now at this point at 6'5" plus 200 plus pounds. Everybody wants that, obviously, but especially for Notre Dame because you don't have enough of that. That's why it was important for Notre Dame to get in with Dylan Robinson, the kid that's on campus now, because he brings a similar mold. He's not as freaky of an athlete as Derek Meadows is, but he is 6'2", 6'3", has clocked in the high 4.4s. He could play outside. Like, that is the type that you really need. And if Notre Dame is able to get a Derek Meadows, even if you guys consider it a boomer bust prospect, I don't think that we can disagree on the fact that Notre Dame needs more wide receivers that bring that style. They just don't have enough of it right now.
All right. So that's Mark Meadows. What about Tanook Hines? Where are things standing with him coming into his visit?
Well, if you are tired of the negativity of the Derek Meadows talk, it's because I have a change up for you all. It's because things are in a much better place with Tanook Hines. He's the 2025 Houston, Texas Decaney wide receiver, listed about 5'11", 6 foot, about 175 pounds, somewhere in that ballpark, 170 pounds. Sean, another big time speed guy, though. He's a 10,500 meter kid. The kid can fly. And again, he's not your true boundary receiver. He's more of a outside feel like a Z receiver, but he is lightning in a bottle and he's physical and he brings a lot of really nice components to the table. And kind of the latest is Notre Dame, when they got him on campus this offseason, it was his first time in South Bend. And there was very slight interest before that visit. But when Tanook Hines came here unofficially, interest grew very substantially. Like he saw himself in the blue and gold potentially. Him coming back now, because things are trending in a very good direction with Tanook Hines, I think you have a chance to close this guy out, man, because he talked about it. He's planning a summer commitment. He doesn't want this to go into the season. I would say Notre Dame is right near at the top of the leaderboard right now. If Notre Dame is able to have a successful visit here and give him that same feeling that he had in his unofficial and maybe even a little bit more, I think you have a really good chance of landing a guy like a Tanook Hines, who again is a very important player for Notre Dame right now.
So who's kind of in the mix with Notre Dame right now?
So it's the four guys that I talked about a little bit, the two that are on campus now, the two
No,
that are
I meant with
yeah.
Hines, like who else? Like who's
Oh,
Notre Dame's
sorry.
closest competitor? Sorry.
So it's a great question. Sorry, I'm completely misunderstood your question. So
That's okay.
so
I
Sean,
probably
he
didn't say it
has
right.
no, I think you did. I'm an idiot. So don't mind me here, okay? He has one of the healthiest offer lists you're ever going to see. He has 40 something offers, man. Like his offer list is stupid. He was just that, and I would portray this team as probably the biggest. I would say that this is probably their biggest competition right now. He was just at Texas this past weekend, and he's an in-state kid, Houston, Texas kid. He obviously knows the Longhorn brand really well. I do think Notre Dame can get him out of Texas, though. I really do. With a successful visit, I think that they can overtake that one. But I do think that it's going to be a staying in Texas conversation versus going and be different conversation. And we've had that conversation in the past, right? Like literally, if Jaden Greathouse didn't end up at Notre Dame, he was probably staying to play for the Longhorns. We've had this conversation in the past. We have. So Notre Dame has been better since Margaret Freeman took over as far as attacking the Lone Star State. I think that you have a chance here, but you're going to have to beat out like an in-state power like Texas and a couple of the other schools that has been on Tanook Hines just as long as you have been at this point.
All right. So not quite as much on the line for this visit for Hines in comparison to Meadows this weekend, but things looking pretty good. Like maybe we kind of hear something in the near future, huh?
This is why you need to be on the boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com, Sean. I like to
Okay.
think that we put out a
Okay.
lot of intel this past weekend, but here, I'll tell you guys this, okay? Well, we'll never predict commitments, but you can obviously get a very good understanding as far as who we're feeling confidently about, and we'll tell you who we're
Right.
feeling confidently about. I mean, guys, it's not rocket science. If I say I really like how where Notre Dame is in this commitment in this recruitment right now, they're probably in a really dang good spot, right? Like I don't hide my emotions here, and I think the key part is, especially if you just want a little bit of insight, this weekend around Sunday evening, more than likely, I would sign up at boards@irishbreakdown.com if you
okay.
aren't already there, because I'm going to tell you that we will have had the 4 wide receivers on the board, because as of today, with the commitments of Jerome Bettis Jr. and Elijah Burst, and obviously the decommitment a couple weeks ago of Sean Terry, Notre Dame has 2 wide receiver spots open for sure. Like there's no question about that. There could be 3 though. It's possible that Notre Dame does take 3 in this class, depending on which 3 want to come. And with John Anthony Hall visiting now, with Dylan Robinson visiting now, with over the next few days, you're going to also get Tanook Hines and Derek Meadows on campus Sunday nights and an intel piece. I think that you guys will be able to gather a lot of great information of who are the final 2 to 3 guys that will end up in the class. I guarantee that you will be able to pencil it together because you're all very smart out there in in YouTube land. I think that you can kind of understand how these things kind of piece together, but we're going to get a very good understanding over the next few days of what the wide receiver class is going to look like for Notre Dame in 2025.
Go to the boards, read between the lines. I obviously, I'm on the board. I need to read more of the recruiting stuff. That I know that, especially now. Like, I don't know why I'm not, but
just June. Just read me in June. That's all you got to do.
That's right. So you're feeling pretty good the way things are trending, though, when it comes to like what this class could end up looking like in terms of the wide receivers.
Yeah, I am. Look, I don't think that it was a perfect process, and I do think that Notre Dame made a couple bad decisions early that weren't Mike Brown's fault. I think that was just a staff's decision, right? Like passing on guys like Cooper Perry and not continuing to recruit Dalen McCutcheon. Like I think that there was a couple bad missteps early, and I do think that the Chancey Stuckey to Mike Brown transition halted momentum with a couple of guys. Like there's no doubt about it, but if you end up like in a hypothetical situation where you have the two wide receivers you already have in this class, and you end with Dylan Robinson and Tanuk Hines, and then maybe also John Anthony Hall, like that's a good wide receiver class, man. Is it as good as it should have been? Probably not. Was there a flawed process along the way? Absolutely. Would never dispute that at any point. But if you ask me in a vacuum, is that a good wide receiver class though? Yeah. I think that's a good wide receiver class. So Notre Dame has good, and I would say this easily this way, Sean. Of the four wide receivers that we're talking about here, I feel very good about two. I feel good about another, and I don't feel great about one. 3 out of 4 is pretty good, though, man. That's a pretty good percentage going down the stretch. So you feel pretty good.
All right, sounds good. I feel good about that. I feel good about those comments, Ryan. I'll just go to the boards more often now, so that I don't have to wait.
You should. We have great.
All right. Anything else? Anything else before we wrap up and switch to hoops?
Well, I would just say that even outside of the wide receiver conversation, I mentioned the two linebackers that were on board this past weekend. I mentioned Jadon Blair that is on campus right now, the star safety out of North Carolina. Notre Dame has quietly been picking up a great momentum down the stretch here. And it's funny because there are some schools that are out there that are going to have like 10 official visitors in each of these spots, right? Notre Dame is going to have 3, and 2, and then they're done after this weekend. They don't have any other official. I mean, like Malik Clark might visit, but like that official visit's kind of up in the air at this point, right? Because he dropped the top 5, the wide receiver out of South Carolina. But otherwise, Notre Dame has a chance down the stretch here, Sean, to land 2 very talented top 100 level linebackers, to land a kid that I consider a top 50 safety in this class. And you have a chance to land 2 to 3 very good wide receivers as well. So Notre Dame has a chance to really cement a good class down the stretch here. It's just going to be about closing time the next few days.
Sounds good to me. If you're not already, subscribe to the Champions Lounge. Head to irishbreakdown.com, go to premium boards, go to the Champions Lounge, get yourself a subscription because you'll find all that good, juicy information that is very vital right now when it comes to Notre Dame recruiting, all that intel and more from Brian Roberts, Brian Driscoll and company.
Yep. Enjoy Hannah Hidalgo. I'm sorry if I didn't live with the expectation, but yes.
No, you absolutely hit it. I think you were punching the clock there, man. You were nailing all the points, all the high points.
All right,
thanks,
Sean,
Ryan.
I appreciate you, bro. Thank you, sir.
All right,
I'll talk to you.
Absolutely. Take care. That's Ryan Roberts, our Notre Dame recruiting analyst. Jesse is going to be along in a little bit with Rapid Fire. We've got more Notre Dame football topics, of course, to cover once we get to Rapid Fire. But now we are going to bring in Fighting Irish point guard Hannah Hidalgo. Well, we are joined by one of the Notre Dame greats. She is the reigning ACC Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. It's Hannah Hidalgo. How are you, Hannah? Thanks for joining us.
I'm well. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Great to have you. We were just kind of talking before we got started. You're back on campus now. You got to spend some time away. Was it nice to kind of get away for a little bit after that, rookie season and basically getting in almost a year ago, I guess, at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always good to, have a reset and, just to kind of go home and see my people when I'm not able to see them all year. So it was great.
Well, and again, like we were just chatting a little bit, you got to do something pretty unique. Kassan Prosper, one of your teammates, her brother plays for the Dallas Mavericks. He's obviously in the NBA Finals right now, but you got to go down and actually see him in action there in the Western Conference Finals, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was so fun. I mean, the atmosphere was just crazy. It looked like a sold out arena. It was so much fun.
So, as someone who's been playing at such a high level, competitive level for as long as you have, AAU and however, far long back it goes, when was the last time that you really, got a considerable, more than maybe a week or two amount of time to yourself?
I think it was maybe right before I came to college. I had a little bit of a break because I graduated early and I wasn't able to come on campus yet because stuff had to be, figured out and settled. So I think right before I came to campus.
Are you someone who likes some downtime? Do you have to be doing something all the time? What's that usually look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I love my downtime. I really like. I love to relax. Especially with it being such a vigorous season, I love to be able to, relax and wind down. But I only need a couple days to wind down before I need to be doing something, whether it's some activity. Actually, I just picked up bowling when I was back at home, which I
Really?
awful at, which I'm still not great, but I'm okay. I'm not too bad, but it's fun to be able to go home and chill, and then be able to do activities with my family.
Bowling is one of those sports. It's like, even if you're not good, like you throw a strike every now and then, you feel like you're something,
Yeah,
right?
right, exactly.
Well, you know, did you play other sports growing up? Like, looking at your feet, you look like someone who could have been like a really great soccer player. Did you ever play soccer or
Yeah.
anything else growing up?
Yep, I played soccer growing up until my freshman year. I played my freshman year at school, and then I ran track when I was younger, a little bit younger, but I quit track because I did not like running that much. Running with no purpose. So I quit track, and then soccer I played until my freshman year. When then I started taking basketball, just focusing on that.
It's interesting. You were just mentioning the long season, and obviously your freshman season. So, I mean, the season goes almost 6 months,
Yeah.
basically. And I think that one thing that a lot of people started worrying about with you specifically is, like, you were getting, like, you're getting to the basket, you're drawing those fouls, you're going to the floor and maybe, taking some hard falls. How did your body react through that? And did you need kind of some time to recover after the season was over after that?
I'm young and I have a pretty athletic body, so I'm able to take those hits. Of course, as I get older, I'm not going to be able to always fall on the ground. So of course, I have to learn how to be able to stay on my feet. But right now and last season, I'm still young. I'm only 19, so it was easy to be able to take those hits and pop right back up. But again, it's good to get downtime and just allow my body to recover. But I feel like physically I was okay, but mentally you just have to have a reset.
That's funny you say that, because that's exactly right. I mean, obviously, like, I was never the athlete at the level of you, but played in high school and stuff and you don't feel it quite as much back then, but it does catch up with you over time, I guess. And you guys have a great training staff and stuff like that to help you through that as well.
Yep, absolutely. Our trainers take very good care of us. They're very active. They're very proactive with everything that we need to be doing and how to take care of our bodies.
When you were growing up, did you say, like, were you thinking, like, I want to play in the WNBA, I want to play in college? What was kind of motivating you, I guess, as you were coming up through the game?
Yeah, I feel like when I was younger, I was really just playing for fun. I didn't have any, goals of, I want to go to this college, I want to do this. It was really just for fun. As I got older, I was like, okay, like, I want to go to college and, be one of the greats in women's college basketball. And so it was a dream, and I feel like, of course, my parents and all my brothers played basketball, so it was inevitable that I, played and kind of make it pro. But that became more my mindset, like maybe my junior year of, I want to go pro, I want to play in the league and everything like that. I feel like before I was saying it and didn't really know what that meant, or didn't really care for it, but like now I'm like, yeah, I want to play professional.
Was it just that your game came along at kind of such a rapid rate, and it became obvious that was going to be something for you? Is that kind of what maybe started motivating you there?
Yeah, probably. I was in the gym constantly, and I saw improvement, and I was like, I think this is something that, I want to do because I love the game of basketball, and, this is something that I don't want to have to work somewhere where I'm not happy. You know, I love the game of basketball. I'm happy,
Right.
but I do. So I think I can make money off it.
And your dad was part of that as well, right? Like
Oh.
kind of in the gym and stuff like that.
Yeah, my dad was always in the gym. Of course, both of my parents helped me with, reach my goals. My dad was always in the gym with me, kind of working me out.
I coached my son for a while, like through high school, and I think there's good and bad to that, right? It's like there's like you're riding those good and bad times together. It's like you like that time, but there's two sides to it, I think, right?
For sure, of course. I mean, there's always good and bad. I mean, a lot of times my dad was on me the hardest because,
Right.
he knew that I could accomplish and he knows what I can do and he wanted me to succeed. So he was always on me the hardest. But, the connection that I have with my dad while we're playing the game it's great. And so, that's the kind of good of it of, I'm able to, I was able to play with a lot of freedom,
Yeah, I mentioned your ACC accolades, and of course you got All-American honors as well. But you're the ACC Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. There was a strong case, I think, for Player of the Year for you as well. And you're talking to some people, like when we went out to the ACC tournament, I talked to plenty of people who voted for you, for Player of the Year. Did it bug you at all that you didn't get that, considering you led the league in scoring, and of course you led the nation in steals as well?
Yeah. No, not at all. It didn't bother me at all. I feel like, I always tell myself that what God has for me is for me. And so if he closes one door, then that door wasn't for me to go through. So, I'm blessed and I'm happy with, how God has blessed me throughout the season. So I don't want to be prideful and, be worried about, what God blessed everyone else with, because again, what God has for me is for me. So I try not to get too focused on, this accolade and that accolade, because then I feel like it changes my mindset of why I really play the game of basketball.
What's maybe the biggest thing that you learned in your first year in college?
I say my first year, I think we dealt with, a lot of adversity. And I feel like, just learning, and I'm still learning, how to overcome adversity. And we went through, a lot of injuries, a lot of people going down, not playing, not having a lot of numbers, and just, I feel like we just went through a lot. But we as a team did a great job of kind of sticking together and being able to play together as a team and kind of trust each other.
Your steals are again one thing that really stands out, especially when you lead the nation. I was wondering if you can kind of take, people sort of inside your head a little bit. So you're out there on the court. What are maybe some of the things you're thinking, you're looking at as maybe you're getting ready to try to take the ball away from somebody?
Yeah, I feel like I try and read ahead what the offensive players gonna do next. Whether if they rise up, I feel like I have my hand there ready for them to cross over or kind of put it behind their back. I know a lot of people like to put the ball behind their back, so I always have my hands ready to, kind of get that steal. But I try and play very aggressive and just make the ball handler very uncomfortable. Whether that's kind of jabbing and kind of retreating. I also have a coach that has a lot of trust in me, so I'm able to play aggressive and gamble every once in a while. So it could be a win, it could be high risk, high reward kind of thing. So my coach has a lot of trust in me, so I'm able to gamble and get a lot of steals. But it comes with some bad sometimes too.
Well, your assistant coaches obviously put together a scouting report for the team before every game, and you guys go through film and all that different kind of stuff. Is there anything like, do you sit there and kind of watch that to look for any little things that maybe you can take advantage of when you're watching a player you're going to be guarding a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do a great job of breaking down each person's weakness. So I really watch who I'm defending and see how well they can handle the ball. If they're comfortable handling the ball, do they like pressure, things like that? Do they go right most of the time? Do they go left most of the time? And I think the coaches do a great job of kind of breaking that down. But as I'm watching, I really try and focus on if they're a great ball handler or not.
Why do you think you're able to have so many steals really without having that many fouls relative to the steals that you have?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I had to learn. And, I think God just blessed me with quick hands, of course, but it's something I had to learn because I was fouling out of a couple of games when I was in high school and just picking up early fouls and quick fouls. So I've been able to learn how to, not go for every steal in every single possession, but, play solid every couple possessions and, just try and make the ball handler turn the ball over. You know, it might not be a steal every time, but it might be, you know, a turnover or a bad pass that leads to like a broken offense. So I just try and play aggressive so that, you know, we can get a turnover or maybe shot clock violation or something.
Take us back to when you were being recruited. You talked about having a coach that has a lot of confidence in you. What do you remember the most maybe about your first contact with Niele Ivey?
Yeah, I remember first coming to campus and she was just telling me, you know, you got the keys. You know, like I don't recruit just to recruit. I don't recruit the next biggest thing. Like, you know, I recruit, you know, pieces of a puzzle, and you know, they're all gonna connect. I'm not just over recruiting on everyone, and I think you're a great piece that connects. And so just listening to her kind of say those words and kind of give me reassurance, you know, of course, and then watching Notre Dame play, you know, I had a lot of confidence in, you know, what Coach Ivey was doing and what she is doing now, and I still trust her, you know, to this day. So just her telling me, she gave me so much confidence, and she put so much trust in me before I even committed, and so that was big to me.
That's interesting because I think when you hear other people talk about her, like she is such a great communicator, and just the way she, you know, her relationships and stuff like that, or those kind of things that you're talking about, is it, whether it's the message or just the way she talked to you, is it distinctly different from the way maybe a lot of other coaches were talking to you during that process?
Absolutely. Coach Ivy, she never, you know, degrades anyone. She's never in your face yelling at you and stuff. She's so encouraging. She's so positive, and it really helps me, especially the type of player that I am. I'm already in my head. I'm already, you know, like on myself. So, you know, it's good that, you know, sometimes she'll get on me, but she's never in my face screaming, you know, degrading me, anything like that. You know, she might yell at me and tell me, you know, I need to get right, but then she's encouraging me like most of the time, like, you know, you got this, like you're good, you know. During games, sometimes if I'm in my head, she'll come over to me, she'll put her arm around me, and she just gives me all the reassurance and, you know, the confidence that I need to, you know, if I'm not having a good offensive game, to do something better that might help the team.
Did you ever talk to Gino Auriemma during when you were being recruited?
No, I never talked to Coach.
Really?
I was recruited. No.
That's crazy. Like you heard Caitlin Clark, you know, like back during the season, said she never talked to him either. That's kind of crazy that
Yeah.
two of the, you know, two top players in the country never talked to Gino. Okay, all right, kind of log that, I guess. So again, you know, you're being recruited, and you knew that Olivia Miles was at Notre Dame, and you know she was obviously earning All-American honors of her own here. So I'm curious how Liv's presence on the team sort of impacted your thinking, you know, as you're making that decision to ultimately come to Notre Dame.
Yeah, you know, Liv is a great guard, and I feel like you have to have great guards on your team if you want to win. And she's phenomenal. She has great IQ, and she's flashy. She can score. She can pass, and so my mindset really was playing alongside of her, which is be scary because I feel like no other team kind of has the guard play that we have, not just with me and Liv, but everyone else. Sony, you know, KK, Emma, like all the other guards, Kassan. We have so many guards that, you know, it's tough and it's dangerous for other teams because we can play so fast and we have so many different ball handlers. So just having Liv on the team, it was never a threat or anything. It's honestly a plus, and I looked at it as like a plus, like we can do something great together.
Well, and I mean, you know, when you're coming in, there was, before the injury, obviously, like the whole plan was you two were both supposed to be playing together last season, you know, not just this season, but the plan was for it to be last season. Was that kind of exciting, like thinking about some of those opportunities when you're coming into college? And, you know, like you said, it's not just Liv, but there's a lot of great players on the team as well, but you do play the same position.
Yeah, of course. It was the idea of playing together with her was exciting because again, you know, I'm here to win, and that's really my whole mindset is to win. And obviously, when she went down, it was upsetting, and it really hurt us as a team because Liv, she brings so much to the team, and she's such a, you know, she draws a lot of attention on teams, and so she's really a threat for other teams. So when she went down, it really hurt us, but I think we did a great job of. And I think my teammates did a great job of kind of reading me and kind of, you know, being able to, you know, play alongside of me and play with me because I'm a freshman guard. I've never played with them. I've never been in that position. And so me being able to come in and my teammates being able to respond to me really well was really big, especially playing with Liv for the years that she's been here. Just taking on a whole new point guard is big. And so I was proud of my teammates for being able to do that.
Did you feel any extra pressure because of all that stuff that you were saying? Because now it's like she's not there, and obviously things worked out pretty well, but at the same time, you were a completely unproven guard in game one, going over to Paris to play South Carolina. Like, were you feeling any extra pressure going into that without her?
I say before the season, yes, but um, just of course, just the pressure of being a freshman and taking on a Power Five team, and kind of bringing them on my shoulders, and my coach telling me like, your teammates are looking up to you, they're following you, like you have the keys, like stuff like that. And I'm like, man, this is a lot as a freshman. But I say just throughout the summer, my teammates, especially, they gave me so much reassurance that, they were telling me, like shoot the ball when I was just being very passive. And it just gave me a lot of confidence, like, hey, they want me to take this team. They want me to, shoot more, just be more of a threat. And so that was big. And of course, Coach Ivy, my coach is just constantly putting that trust in me. It really helped me to be able to go out and, in Paris and, be able to play the way I did this season.
I mean, not many freshmen get to play their first career game in Paris.
Yeah.
I mean, that had to be pretty cool just by itself.
Absolutely.
So we've seen some of that video of you and Liv at practice, kind of some of the 2-person game and stuff like that. Has that been pretty fun? Just to kind of work even. I know she was practicing as the season was going on, but now that she's closer to 100% and really looking forward to next year, has it been pretty cool to kind of get out there together more?
Absolutely. Just being on the court with her, it's so different, kind of seeing, how she reads the game and kind of how she sees the game and how she's able to handle the ball and pass the ball. Just playing alongside of that, it's fun. It's fun to see it even now, and I can't wait to, just do open runs and, kind of get up and down, especially for the season.
I mean, do you think that potential, like, I mean, you already scored a lot last year. Like I said, you led the ACC in scoring. Do you think it opens up even more potentially for you as a scorer next season?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Because, Liv is a pass first guard. And of course she can score, but she's looking to give her teammates the ball. Of course, she's a great point guard. So, and again, she draws so much attention. So people are going to be, double teaming her, and her ability to pass is phenomenal. So it definitely opens up the floor for Sony to score, me to score, Maddie to score, everyone to score. It definitely opens it up for everyone.
I think it's going to be, I mean, I think it's 6 players with adding Leah Tu King and Liza Carlin. You've got 6 players on the team who have been first team all conference at some point in your careers, obviously, including both you and Liv and Maddie and Sony, and those two as well. Was it pretty exciting to hear that those 2 players decided to use their transfers and come to Notre Dame to join you guys?
Absolutely. Of course, we watched both girls play. We watched Liza and we watched Leah Tu play. And of course, we played against Leah Tu, and she was having 30 on us and shooting the ball on the floor. So, those pickups were so big for us. And, of course, we were so excited. Not just because of their basketball skill, but also, them as just people off the court. I think they fit really well into, kind of us as a team, and I think they're going to do great.
What would make next season a successful season?
Championship. Just going. We've from what I've seen, we only made it to the Sweet 16. The kind of like the past 2 years, and so I think with the firepower that we have, we're gonna make it. Very far, and prayerfully, win a championship. But we have the skills, we have the girls to do so.
I mean, it feels like that's the next step. Again, when you line up all these players and everybody that you've got on this roster, that it feels like that's legit expectation, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Hannah Hidalgo, you got to get going. I know you've got some practice here this afternoon, so we'll let you get back to work with the team. Hope you have a great rest of your summer, and thanks for doing this today. Appreciate it. Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks for having me.
I did the mute button. I'm waiting for all the people to tell me I was muted. The one and only Hannah Hidalgo, but I appreciate her. Appreciate the one and only Jesse Stiers for dropping in as well. Thank you very much to Renee, Irish Gordian, not there. Gordian Nut's getting a little greedy. He says any shot we could get Hidalgo and Miles at the same time to see how they bounce off each other in an interview. Well, we had Olivia a few weeks ago. We just had Hannah right there. So that's something maybe, like later next season or something. We'll work on that. But I'm very appreciative that we were
That
able to
idea is going to the vault.
I'll put it in the vault. I'm just happy that we were able to get both of them in a span of a few weeks on at different points. Some great stuff I felt like there from Hannah, and some great stuff from Olivia earlier as well, especially when they talk about playing with each other. So great freshman season. And man, it's just like Jess, what we were talking about there at the tail end with Hannah. I mean, when you think about the stacked up talent on this team, and I said, what was the last question that I'm trying to think of how exactly what would equate to a great season, and she said winning a championship. So I think that the expectations are obviously set pretty high going into this year.
They've already started summer workouts, right?
They have, and that's where I should say that was a recorded interview. I don't think I mentioned it beforehand, but that she had to get going to practice. They had practice this afternoon, so we recorded it earlier in the afternoon, and that's why we had to record, because they had practice to get to. They started their summer workouts, I think maybe kind of at the end of last week, so they're at it already for the rest of the summer. She got to go see, I don't think you heard the beginning of the interview, she got to go see Kassan Prosper's brother, who played for
in the
Marquette.
Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, they got to go see some of the Western Conference Finals, NBA playoffs. So that was kind of cool. Well, Jess, let's not waste any more time. Are you ready for rapid fire?
It is, why they pay me the big bucks.
That's right. All those big dollars to come in for this question. Which Notre Dame player are you more confident will have a career year this season? Wide receiver Jaden Thomas or Viper defensive end Jordan Botelho?
As much as it pains me to say this, I have to go with Jordan Botelho at Viper, because I believe this season is better teed up for him comparatively. He has the starting role, and it is essentially his position to lose, right? I think Jaden Thomas is still going to have a rather good season in terms of, his productivity compared to his, first few seasons at Notre Dame. But the realistic situation is the wide receiver room is a much deeper position than the Viper position. There are more opportunities at the wide receiver position comparatively at the Viper position. Even if Jordan Botelho struggles, he is going to be in at least a 2-man rotation, maybe 3-man rotation, depending on how bad his struggles are. But he is going to have a lot of playing time comparatively, right? Just because of what I was just outlining, the wide receiver room has more depth. There's more bodies that can step up. And I think just that's the way I chose to kind of analyze this question in terms of production. So I have to go with Botelho at Viper.
Yeah, and it's not a shot at Jaden Thomas or his talent or anything else, but because of some of the things you're talking about, because they went out to the transfer portal and brought in some other guys from the portal who are also going to play outside, the numbers game doesn't favor Jaden Thomas. Like his work ethic favors him, but he's also moved out exclusively to the boundary for the most part. The best production that he has had so far in his career when he's been healthy has been out of the slot, but I don't think we're going to see much of Jaden Thomas in the slot anymore, because you've got Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison, who are going to be the primary guys there. So Thomas is outside more. The numbers that they've got at the position don't favor him. The numbers do favor Jordan Botelho. And look, 32 tackles and 4 sacks last year. I mean, it's not an extremely high bar for Jordan Botelho. Like 4.5 sacks as a reserve guy 2 years ago are his career high. So he gets to 6 sacks and even 40 tackles. That's an increase in production right there. And I think it's just going to be harder for Jaden Thomas to have a considerable bump, considering all the things that we outlined that kind of work against him a little bit. So I've got to go with Botelho as well.
Yeah, there's just, there's going to be an increase in output on offense this season, no doubt. It's just there's so many more people that the ball can go around to at the wide receiver, running back position. So I just, like you were saying, I just find it harder for Jaden Thomas to really get that sort of output that's going to be shared amongst, a larger group. And then comparatively to Botello, where the bar isn't set very high, it's very obtainable goals essentially.
So we talked on yesterday's show about how Notre Dame should approach its future scheduling in the expanded college football playoff era, which begins this season. And a listener made a comment on YouTube on the video last night. He said that he thinks Notre Dame needs to have one of the top 10 toughest schedules annually to basically be able to remain independent. He also says he wants Big Ten teams like Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, and Ohio State on a constant rotation on Notre Dame's schedule. Do you buy or sell more Big Ten teams on the schedule? And you can also address the top 10 toughest schedule, that's in there as well.
Yeah, I'll start with the top 10 toughest schedule comment. I do believe that Notre Dame needs a relatively tough schedule in order to remain independent, because I think that's the biggest knock that they're going to face in the expanded playoff areas. Everyone else is taking on a tougher schedule because these Power Four conferences are beefed up, right? So what does Notre Dame do in response? I think in order to stay independent and to stay on people's good side, you naturally need to, increase your schedule. But if you look at Notre Dame's track record, they have annually a very, tough schedule. And so and
that's actually something that, people like to take shots at Notre Dame's schedule, but year in and year out, this season is probably going to be a little bit different, but year in and year out, you're right. It actually stacks up very well because of the way they schedule.
Right. So I don't think Notre Dame necessarily needs a top 10. I just think they need a top 25 schedule year in and year out. And I think that's what they consistently do.
Right.
And then moving on to the next part of the question, I do buy them actually rotating in more Big Ten opponents, because to me it makes sense. It's regional, right? So you don't have to travel very far when you're considering Ohio State, Michigan State, Purdue. And I don't have any issue if you want to start maybe looking at Oregon, or if you want to maybe start looking at, some of these other teams that have joined the Big Ten. But I think you can have a rotating schedule amongst the Big Ten where maybe one or two games a season you slot in two Big Ten teams along with your 4 ACC teams, or however that many turns out to be. You include, USC's in the Big Ten now, so they get a part of that, maybe one or two Big Ten opponents every season. And then, I don't mind keeping Navy. I think you could kick out a team like Stanford, but I don't need to see any more Tennessee States. I think that was last year
yes.
was a mistake. And especially with the expanded playoff, going forward, I don't want to see those sort of opponents on the schedule. I wouldn't mind replacing last year Tennessee State with, a Purdue or Michigan State or someone like that.
The reason they already had 2 bye weeks during the season. There's going to be 2 bye weeks during this season as well because of when they play Texas A&M. And the reason they played Tennessee State was because you're coming back from Dublin. I don't know obviously there are a lot of intricacies to putting together a schedule and being able to find teams that fit in place, but it was essentially like, okay, you're not going to take the bye week early. You're going to take 2 during the season. You're going to compensate for it by playing an FCS team that you should be able to beat up on, which they did, and it allowed them to get, like any jet lag factor and all that kind of stuff. But I agree. I don't want to see any more FCS schools. But you're right. I think that really you don't have to necessarily be a top 10 schedule. I would say top 15 to 20, like you said, 25. And typically that's what they're going to be. And Brent said, when we were talking about the strength of schedule, 2024 is the exception. I mean, we'll see what it ends up being. Obviously, these teams that maybe we're not thinking as much of right now, they could overperform this year, and it could make it ultimately a tougher schedule. That's typically what happens. And that's why Notre Dame, even though people look at the schedule and don't always think that it looks that great, and I'm talking more from the outside, they take shots at Notre Dame's schedule, but what ends up happening is it ends up being a very competitive schedule, and it is typically weighted because of the fact that they've had Ohio States and Georgia's, and Clemson ends up on the schedule 3 times in the last 6 or 7 years or whatever it is. But when there's no getting around the fact that when you've got 4 group of 5 teams on the schedule going in, 2 MACs and then 2 service academies. That should bring the strength of the schedule down a little bit this season. So, when you talk about it being an exception, it should be. I mean, we'll see. Who expected Louisville to be what they were last year? We'll see what it ends up being. In terms of the Big Ten teams, when I first looked at this, I'm thinking, because I think somebody came on last night and was saying they want 4 Big Ten teams on the schedule every year. I think that would be a bit much, even though USC is going to be included in the Big Ten. So that'll be part of that number as well. I've never been that excited about Purdue. And, like when they used to have Michigan, Michigan State, and Purdue, and a lot of the times Boston College all on the schedule every year, I never liked that, because what ends up happening is for teams like Michigan State, Purdue, and Boston College, all stepchild type programs, they all essentially consider Notre Dame a much bigger rival than Notre Dame ever considered them. So there was just always more on the line, it seemed like, for them playing against Notre Dame. So I definitely don't want all of them on the schedule at the same time, but I don't mind, as this says, when I think about it more, these Big Ten teams in rotation. You're always going to have USC, and again, they're going to be a Big Ten team. I definitely don't mind a rotation of seeing some of these other Big Ten teams coming on and off the schedule on a regular basis going forward.
I mean, quite honestly, I just kind of miss, Notre Dame's schedule from like 2005 to 2010, when it was like Penn State, Michigan, Michigan State. You rotated in maybe a UCLA, a Tennessee. Washington was on the schedule a little bit. I think if they go back to that older format and you keep 2 Big Ten teams per year, one of them is obviously USC, and then you kind of rotate that other one every year between Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State, and then you keep relatively the same schedule of your core ACC, your service academies. I don't see why that schedule wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's a solid schedule every year, to be honest with you.
Say that again. I'm sorry. I was looking at one of the comments.
No, it's okay. So like having USC as your one, obviously Big Ten team every year.
Right.
And then you rotate a second slot between either Michigan State, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, basically a regional Big Ten team.
Yeah.
You keep your 4 or 5.
I would like to see Penn State get in the rotation here at some point.
Yeah. And then you keep your 4 or 5 ACC slots. So now you're up to, 6 or 7 games. You have your 2 service academies. So then you're up to, 7 or like 9 or 10 games. And then you have, whatever you want with the last 2, maybe a MAC school, maybe keeping Stanford. I think it's definitely doable, I guess is what I'm saying. And I like the idea of I think the main takeaway is I like the idea of rotating a Big Ten spot, every 2 years, basically. You get a home and home, and then you move on to another big team, home and home, home and home. And I think that would keep a lot of people happy.
Yeah. I agree with that for sure. And, some people were saying get an SEC team on there every year. John says beating an FCS team doesn't help Notre Dame's strength of schedule. You're absolutely right. But, like last year when you had the FCS team, you obviously had Ohio State, you had Clemson, Louisville ended up being pretty good. Duke was a good team as well. So, again, the schedule, the schedule ended up kind of offsetting the fact that you were playing that FCS. And a couple of comments from Michael Hahn as well. He said Purdue was on it because they were the only original Big Ten school that didn't boycott Notre Dame, when Michigan organized it in the late 20s. You're right. And again, I'm not hung up on something that happened basically 100 years ago at this point. When you talk about Big Ten grudges at that point, all those people are pushing daisies at this point. So I'm not nearly as hung up on that, but you're right. And that was overlooked. The fact that a lot of people talked about the Michigan series ending when in fact it was an intermittent series at best. I mean, there were large breaks between Notre Dame and Michigan ever playing. Purdue and Michigan State played much more regularly than Michigan ever did. And there obviously is proximity there. But again, that became much more like, I'm just going to be honest. I don't like dealing with the nasty Purdue fans who come to town when Notre Dame and Purdue play because they're just flat out nasty most of the time. Now, there are some, like the locals, you don't hear it from as much, but I just not down with that. Just not down with it. Because, again, it means more to them than it does to Notre Dame. And, Michael's also right about the 24 strength of schedule is not Notre Dame's fault because Miami should have been on it and they screwed Notre Dame over. You're absolutely right. We mentioned that yesterday. It is what it is, but there's, whether it's Notre Dame's fault or not, Notre Dame is going to have to deal with it this year. I put it more on the ACC. Like, you shouldn't have just let Miami off the hook. Like, you should have told Miami, you got to get rid of that extra game. It's not on Notre Dame to do this. You screwed it up. You get rid of that extra game and you figure that out in the future. That's what it should have been, but that's not what they did. So, okay. So the NCAA has approved allowing commercial sponsor advertisements on football fields for regular season games beginning this season. Do you think Notre Dame's ever going to put sponsored logos on the field at Notre Dame Stadium?
So I looked up Notre Dame's official sponsors of Notre Dame athletics. Wanted to make sure I had the right ones. Dick's Sporting Goods is amongst them. Teeling Whiskey is another one. Yeti is another one.
That's what I want to see. I want to see the Teeling Whiskey down there.
Meyer, DirecTV, Howard Bailey, which is a financial service. Allstate, obviously NBC. I think
is Coca-Cola still one of them?
They are not on the official sponsorship.
They
Old
were
Dominion,
for several years. Okay.
Yeah, Old Dominion Freight, and then of course Guinness. So to me, knowing that this is Notre Dame, I think that list automatically gets condensed. They're not putting whiskey or Guinness on their
unfortunately
on their field. So to me, what this comes down to is I think there's three viable candidates. I think that you could definitely see the NBC logo down there somewhere on the field. I think you could see the Meyer logo.
Well, there's already, when it's a Notre Dame home game, there's already NBC logos all over the TV screen. So I don't know if you need any more of that necessarily, but that obviously is the biggest one, what they're getting from them.
And then
don't forget Under Armour though, as well.
Under Armour.
Yeah.
Meyer, DirecTV. So Allstate. I guess what I'm getting at is if they were going to do it, I think it's a very small group of who it would be. I think it'd be it's plastering another NBC logo down there somewhere, Allstate or Meyer. I don't think they do anything fun is ultimately what I'm getting at. And I think it'd have to be a very big global brand, essentially, that offers no sort of repercussion, essentially.
Well, and I think that it would be either you ran through that list, whoever it would be, they would have to pay, I think, an astronomical amount of money to get Notre Dame to do it. That, Notre Dame has always resisted that. And that was one of the the pushbacks when they did the video board that they put in there, was people were worried that there were going to be just a boatload of advertisements up there on that video board. And they've resisted that. And I just feel like Notre Dame doesn't even put lettering in the end zones still.
Right.
They don't put Notre Dame or Fighting Irish or a Shamrock in the end zones. They've still got the white stripes in there. If they're going that route, I have a hard time seeing them putting copious corporate logos out there.
Well, I guess ultimately that's the way I would prefer it. I like the simple traditionalist type of look.
Right.
And I think if you've already kind of set the stage or the standard that's what you're going to do. So I don't believe there's any reason to deviate from it. I feel like Notre Dame does their sponsors well. I think that they don't need more, exposure or logos on the field. There's already commercials. There's already, like you were saying, the big board during the game. I prefer the field to be pretty simple. I think they could add a few things here and there, but it would be relative to Notre Dame and Notre Dame football. I don't think that they should branch out and start adding more, corporate sponsors, essentially.
DK, this might be DK's second best ever point that he's actually, legit point that he's made on this show. I have to give you kudos for that, DK. He says they do it on the telecast where they just add them to the feed. So essentially it's like green screen. Basically, they're superimposing a graphic on the screen, just like the first down line or the red zone line, or whatever it happens to be. Like it's an extra package within the NBC deal. What do you think about that? Do you think that they would act like that they would do essentially a graphic on the screen that only TV viewers would see? It's not actually a logo on the field, but yeah, like the NBA does it. When you watch a baseball game, I realize not that many people watch baseball games.
Oh, the Reds did that on their mound. I recognize they rotate the sponsor on their mound.
Yeah, there's a lot of
how do they
on
do
the
that?
Mound or on most of the signage that you see at a Major League Baseball game that shows up on TV, like on the backstop behind the batter, that's actually just a green screen there. And like stuff, a lot of times NBA stuff as well. It's like a green screen type deal where they just put the ad up and you're only seeing it on TV. People who are at the game wouldn't actually.
I would prefer that route because I think it keeps the fields and the in-game experience more genuine.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that as well. And that involves your TV sponsor as well, But I think that having a guy like Pete Bavacqua as your new point man, a guy with a TV background, I think that things could get more creative along those lines, where there's something in it for both NBC and Notre Dame, potentially. So I think that makes more sense, that it's stuff that's going to show up on the TV screen, but it's not actually going to be on the field itself. So you're not cluttering up your field, and you could actually do more with that, because then it's not just one or two sponsors. There are a lot more sponsors who could rotate throughout the course of the game that you would see on your TV screen if you did it that way, than if you actually plastered something on the field itself, which again, they're still doing white lines in the end zone. So I have a hard time thinking that they're actually going to put something fixed on the field out there. So here's what new Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer had to say after working with former Notre Dame linebacker Marist Liufau. Quote, "Number one, he's brilliant. He catches on really quick. He wants to be so good and so intense. He's almost too much at it right now. The other thing is, I think he's a really good pressure player. And I think having that with Micah Parsons and another pressure player that is a linebacker, or he can move more somewhere else and Parsons can move somewhere else. I think those pieces add to confusion for the offense. Plus, he's a really good rusher." End quote from Mike Zimmer on Marist Liufau. What do you think about that?
I like to gloat every now and then. So I think what I have to say about that, first and foremost, on this show, I felt like I did a very good job of stating the pros and cons of Marist Liufau and informing the masses that he is going to go higher and have an NFL role that probably people weren't expected to see, right? Just because he wasn't a great run-stopping linebacker doesn't mean that there's not a role for him in the NFL. And so Mike Zimmer outlined a lot of what I said were his pros. He's a good pass rusher. He has good versatility. He's really smart. And he has
actually good in coverage as well. Never gave up a touchdown pass.
Right. Very good. He's elite coverage linebacker. He can cover just about anyone out of the backfield. And then you combine that with the want or the hunger to learn, the ability to not only learn a defense, but probably teach a defense to, other players at some point. It's really an "I told you so" moment, and I think the part that I didn't think of.
I like how you're just patting yourself on the back for all this.
I mean,
like you're not.
We can pull up the tapes if we really ultimately.
Do you think this is actually like the thing that stands out to me is he wants to be so good and so intense, he's almost too much at it right now? That's a line that stands out to me. Like, is that his poles are out ahead of his skis a little bit? Like what we saw of Marist Liufau, like he just needs to reel it in a little bit.
I think with Marist Liufau, he expects perfection out of himself, and when he doesn't obtain it, it brings him down. And I think that's what Zimmer is ultimately getting at: is you're not going to be perfect at this right now, and so you can't let that affect your play. Essentially, I think that's what he's saying is too intense. Is he expects? I think Marist expects himself to literally pick it up in a day and be able to execute it the next day, right? And so I still think there's a learning curve to being an NFL linebacker.
I can see the pass rush stuff for him right now. I think we could all see that right now, the pass rush itself. But I do feel like Mike Zimmer maybe has a very high level of expectation of what he's actually going to get from Marist Liufau that might be separated from reality a little bit, unless they do these very specific things like you're talking about. If they can, because we all know that in the NFL, depth becomes an issue. And if he's forced into play, just like last year, you've talked about how they played the safeties so much at linebacker. Well, they had to because of, they were thin and they didn't have guys because of injuries and stuff like that. If they play to Marist Liufau's strengths, that's one thing. But I feel like the more he's asked to do, the more you're going to see, kind of some of the stuff that we saw here at Notre Dame. Like, he's a very situational guy, at least early on.
I think he can be an every down linebacker. I just don't think you're asking, like, again, it's all schematic, right? I don't think you're asking him to plug the A and B gaps on a run game. Like, that's just not what you're doing with Marist Liufau. I think the thing that stuck out to me in Zimmer's quote, and something I hadn't really thought of, is the games that him and Micah Parsons can play off of each other as rushers, because Marist Liufau can get after a quarterback with good rushing speed, right? And so when defenses are already worried about Micah Parsons, the ability to maybe, drop Micah Parsons into coverage because he can play linebacker and then bring Marist off the edge, or vice versa. Find a stunt that allows both of them to be blitzing at the same time. Yeah. I think this only enhances Micah Parsons' game first and foremost. And I think Micah Parsons being on the field is ultimately going to enhance Marist Liufau's game as well, because all the eyes and the attention are going to be on Micah Parsons, and Marist Liufau is a sneaky athletic linebacker, right?
I mean, Brent's yelling at you right now that he can't fill. I mean, I think we all know that, but I don't think that that's what you're saying. I don't think that you're saying he's going to be, because like you basically said, he's not going to be
a fill linebacker.
That gap-to-gap fill linebacker.
Right. It's going to be a boundary off the edge type of linebacker.
Off
and
ball.
So Mike Zimmer knows that. And maybe, and who's to say that Marist Liufau can't be taught some of his, basically be coached up on some of his tackling deficiencies or his filling the A-gap deficiencies. Like, he is still a very raw linebacker, in my opinion. And so I like the first and foremost is his versatility, what they can do with him, moving him around. He's a pass rusher. He can cover. He can play off in coverage, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff you can do with the athleticism that Marist Liufau presents.
And I think that that's what they see most of all is the athleticism. And again, the athleticism's always been there, but being assignment sound has been the weakness. But that's also why I keep going back to if they are able to keep him in very specific roles that play to his strengths, I think they'll be fine early on. But there's a learning curve. And, Brent says definitely not Dre Greenlaw or Fred Warner. But again, two really good athletes, great athleticism there. And, I guess, I would flip that back to, were Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner when they showed up in San Francisco? Was there a little learning curve for them as well?
Yes.
Great athlete. I think we all know that. But
a lot of people are thinking, is he going to be a starter? I just put it like this. Jerry Jones doesn't waste draft picks for guys who aren't going to be starters. He's going to be out on that field. This.
Good or bad.
They're very proud of their draft picks, and they are going to run them out there. And they're like, Marist Liufau is probably going to, I would guarantee that he plays at least 70% of the snaps on defense this season.
Oh boy, I don't know about that. I mean, I don't disagree that could happen, but man, it concerns me a little bit. Fill in the blank. Former Notre Dame baseball coach Paul Mainieri expected to be named South Carolina's new head coach, and you are blank.
I'm shocked, but not shocked. I thought for sure that he was going to hang it up, but a few years ago, it's already been like 2-3 years, I think, at this point, when they had that reunion at Notre Dame and he had just kind of stepped away from LSU.
He'd been out for about a year at that
He had
point.
been out. You could just tell by talking to him, the itch was still there. You know what I mean? And so I think he took a few years to simmer down a little bit, maybe gain back some of the health and really see if he, still has it in him. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he can't stay away. You know what I mean? Like that's why I'm not shocked, because he's just a baseball guy. And I think that the more he stays away from the game, the more it really bugs him. And so the ability to kind of come back, I'm most curious to see how this one goes, because, it was Notre Dame and then it was LSU. I feel like this is his biggest leap of faith at this point in his career.
Well,
he could ride off into the sunset and really just enjoy retirement, enjoy all the accolades that he's done with his career. I think it's a big leap of faith to go out and say, I can come back to, an SEC program, play an SEC baseball and still be at that level that I want to be at.
And it's interesting because now LSU is LSU. It's arguably the biggest brand name in all of college baseball. But when Paul Mainieri took it over in 2007, they were bad. They didn't make the NCAA tournament the year before he got there, just like South Carolina didn't make it the last. I know they didn't make it this year, but they were at back-to-back national. It's been longer than I thought it was. It's 2010 and 2011. But what I'm saying is, he's taking over a program that, even though they're not LSU, they were elite for quite a while as well under Ray Tanner, who's now going to be his boss there. And what two of the most interesting things to me is Paul Mainieri is not going to go into this. He's going to go into this in a better situation from an assistant coach standpoint that he went into with LSU, even though one of the guys is going to be the same. He took his pitching coach, Terry Rooney, with him from Notre Dame to LSU. Terry Rooney was just at LSU last year as their recruiting coordinator, and Mainieri is going to take him to South Carolina to be his pitching coach again. That's a guy who has head coaching experience and elite recruiting experience. And Mainieri is also going to have Monty Lee on his staff. He's a former head coach at Clemson, who was an assistant coach the last couple of years at South Carolina. So he's going to have two assistant coaches with head coaching experience and recruiting experience in that footprint he's going to be in down there at South Carolina. So I think you can definitely argue that maybe it is a little bit bigger challenge turning that thing back around. But in a transfer portal era and an NIL era, I think that they've got a really good chance with, you're talking about a Hall of Fame head coach with two assistants who have been head coaches themselves who are going to be under him. So I think it's a really
Hall
good
of Fame
for him.
athletic director as well.
Exactly.
The combination of them four is going to get something done. And I actually I thought Paul was older than what he is. He's only 66, which I think in terms of coaching
ages you, and just like being the head football coach at Notre Dame ages you, being the head baseball coach at LSU ages you, because he, no offense to Paul, obviously, but he aged in his time down there at LSU, because there are big time expectations, but there are going to be big time expectations at South Carolina as well. There are some people, there's some South Carolina people who don't like this. They think, oh, you're bringing this old man out of retirement and all this stuff. Again, Ray Tanner, the guy who used to be the baseball coach at South Carolina, is his boss, and he's the one who hired Paul Mainieri. They had a great relationship back when they were coaching against each other. Ray Tanner has coached against Mainieri, and he's seen him recently. He knows exactly what he's getting. So, I think that you're looking at a guy, his assistant coach, Mark Kingston, took over for him last time when Tanner moved from baseball coach to athletic director. I think you've got the right guy making a hire like this, and you're bringing in a great head coach who I think has still got a lot left in the tank. I think he just needed kind of some time, with some of the physical stuff that he was going through there with the neck surgery and stuff like that, to kind of step away. And I think that his juices are definitely recharged, because like you said, when we talked to him a couple of years ago when he was at Notre Dame, you could see him sort of needing to scratch that itch. Yes. He's going to have a chance to do that again now.
We're talking about a guy that won the whole thing in 2009. He's got 4 SEC regular season championships, 6 SEC tournament championships, 4 Big East regular season championships, and 5 Big East tournament championships with, multiple Coach of the Year awards. if I'm South Carolina, I don't know what more that you want, right? Because this guy has a proven track record. You've been crap ever since Ray Tanner stepped down, and Ray Tanner, this is a guy that Ray Tanner competed against, and you would probably call a rival at some point. And so, to me, the ability to recognize game as game and hire Paul Mainieri and set aside everything else, I think should show that if Ray Tanner believes in Paul Mainieri and can set aside their rivalry that dates back to LSU and South Carolina, that he probably made a good business decision on behalf of South Carolina.
Yep, absolutely. And again, I'm impressed with the staff that he put together in a pretty quick amount of, now again, he's inheriting Monty Hall, or not Monty Hall. He's not a game show host, Monty Lee. But again, Lee was the head coach at Clemson, had solid success at Clemson before it kind of tapered off toward the end. But the fact that you've got two assistant coaches who have been head coaches and a guy like Lee who's recruited that area down there for an extensive amount of time, to have that kind of guy with, the recruiting ins and all that kind of stuff, I think that it's a really good situation for Mainieri. So I'm really curious to see how quickly they're able to turn it around. I don't think it's going to be very long. So USA Basketball officially released the women's basketball Olympic roster, and they say their reason for leaving Caitlin Clark off the team is because they didn't think she had enough high-level experience. Do you buy or sell the rationale?
That is a 100% sell for me. And, whether or not you want to say she's not ready because of talent, I can completely buy that, right? But there's no reason that Caitlin Clark can't sit on a bench and just practice and develop with the USA team, even if she's not a starter, even if she's not getting sizable minutes. Like, she is still.
But do you want that distraction of all the questions being about that if she's not getting all those minutes, considering everything that's come in the last month since she's been in the WNBA?
Yeah, because I think it's it takes away. It's a strategic decision that ultimately is going to alter the future of women's basketball, and that's what women, like, they have been trying to repair the image of women's basketball. They have been fighting to get all these things on behalf of women's basketball, and I think when you don't include Caitlin Clark on the most national stage, you're just basically saying you don't care about her and what she's doing for the sport ultimately. So I get it that, yes, it could provide a distraction, but she's still, again, one of the most popular players in the league. And it's not like her skill is that far off. She was the #1 draft pick in the WNBA. To me, and maybe this is a little bit of a, this comparison is a little bit too much, but like, it would be like saying, the #1 draft pick in the NBA can't be on the essentially the USA roster. Like, imagine had the USA left out Carmelo Anthony, if they'd left out someone like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. And I get it. These players are probably a little bit better, more prominent than what.
But would
Caitlin
you
Clark
have taken
was?
LeBron James as a rookie? I don't think you would have. Like, if the Olympics were that year, I don't think you're taking LeBron James.
I would have.
I understand the
She's
case
going to
for
be
her
on an
being-
Olympic team at some point.
But see, and that's why I don't think that it hurts her just to wait 4 years and be on it 4 years down the road. I just think that she is such a lightning rod, and there is already all this jealousy that we've talked about from these other players. When you're only talking about the select 12 players in, that are going to be on this roster, I think that it would have gotten even worse than what it was. And I think the other side of this is they're going to shut down. The WNBA is going to shut down for a month while they're over there playing in the Olympics. And I don't think that that's a bad thing for Caitlin Clark either, after playing an entire, like just like we had Hannah Hidalgo on earlier, and they're doing their summer workouts right now. And then when school starts, they'll be doing workouts, and they'll get into official practice. And then they go through basically a 5.5 month season. And then she got a couple of weeks break. Caitlin Clark did, and went straight into the WNBA training camp and then straight into the season. She and the Indiana Fever have played more games than anyone else because they're already using her as a marketing tool for the WNBA. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that Clark just gets to rest her body for a little bit I think
Not
she'll
only
be
that, but
fine.
just
I think
reset.
4 years from now, she'll be one of the stars of the U.S. Olympic team. But I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that she doesn't go right now.
I see. I guess I didn't think of that perspective of the distraction when you're trying to play at the on the highest stage, essentially, right? Because you don't want to be going through Olympic practices and reporters continuously asking you, why isn't Caitlin Clark playing, right? Because it should be focused on the team and what they're trying to accomplish. And so I do see that side of things. And another part of it is when you're trying to, formulate a 12-person roster, is you got to realize that bit pretty much gives you 2 players at each position, right? And so is Caitlin Clark a top 2 guard in the league right now? I would say no, right? But to me, the reason why I was so on board or so, I guess, in disagreement is because of, again, she is still the future of the sport. And I didn't think there would be any harm of at least letting her develop and practice with these kind of players and those sort of things. But I do see what you're saying, that it can also be a distraction. So I'm really truly stuck in the middle. I don't know if there is a right answer at the end of the day.
I'm a little bit in the middle, as well. And, like when we do these shows, like being in the middle typically isn't good. But I do think that there are 2, like I can see, like there's a very good case for her being deserving of being there. And for when you're still trying to bring more exposure to the game of women's basketball. And I mean, there's definitely, I can definitely see why NBC would want her there, but does NBC's needs match up with USA basketball needs? Obviously not. Right. But
they're there to win gold. They don't care how many people are watching.
Yeah, exactly. And like Michael was saying, we talked about this yesterday, there's, I think, an even bigger case for Arike Agumbawale being there, just with what she is producing right now, averaging 26 a game, but she's left off the team. But, you do have a couple of other Irish guards on there, and that's great. Notre Dame has great representation from that aspect. But and that's my point. I just think that there are, there's just as big a case, I think, for why is Diana Taurasi even on this team? Like if you want to talk
that's
about
what
that,
I mean.
So there's like,
are we truly picking the best
does
players?
Diana Taurasi need to be there? And then, like when you talk about the development of a player like Caitlin Clark and what she's going to be potentially for Team USA for the next 16 years or
yeah, I mean, are we letting Diana Taurasi play on the team because she's one of the best players? Or are we just letting her ride off into the sunset and get one more Olympics under her belt?
Right.
Because there's more deserving players than Diana Taurasi, skill level wise, that could be on that team.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so after Oklahoma won its 4th straight Women's College World Series and its 7th title overall since 2013, there have been some outcries to move the Women's College World Series out of Oklahoma City because of it being an unfair home field advantage for Oklahoma. Do you buy or sell moving the Women's College World Series out of Oklahoma City?
I sell it. The only reason this is an issue is because the team is winning. If you want to stop that, then beat them. It doesn't matter where you're playing at the end of the day. Again, if Oklahoma wasn't good and another team was dominating this thing every year in Oklahoma City, it wouldn't be an issue, right? If you want to beat a team and you want to take down what I would consider a dynasty right now in college softball, you just got to beat them. And so people always throw a fit when you start beating them and you start beating them consecutively, people start whining and crying and trying to find excuses to why it's unfair. No, get better players and beat Oklahoma. That's the answer to me at the end of the day. This is a big sell to me.
I completely agree. There was it's been 20 or so years ago, but the Nebraska baseball team made it to the College World Series a couple years in a row. Remember when Jabba Chamberlain was their star pitcher and all that? He ended up with the Yankees, but they packed Rosenblatt when Nebraska was there because obviously it's in Omaha, and they didn't talk about they didn't win the World Series, but at the same time they weren't talking about moving the World Series out of Omaha because you're getting bigger Nebraska crowds in there. And I feel like, especially in softball and baseball, I don't feel like home field advantage is that big a thing. And the fact that in these sports, like even when you go to a super regional, they basically flip a coin to determine who's going to be, you have a 3-game series. They flip a coin to determine who's going to be the home team. Like they alternate. Just because you're hosting doesn't mean you're the home team and you get the last at bat and all that stuff. I mean, you're just going through a period right now where Oklahoma has just become this dominating juggernaut. Their only other national championship came all the way back in 1982. So this is, it's a recent phenomenon. They're not going to stay dominant forever. So I can't see moving the sport's biggest event out of the city that happens to host it just because the team that's winning right now happens to be a few miles away. So big sell for me too. All right, are you guys going back and forth here on something still? You and Brent chirping at each other?
I just him and Brent and Irish Gordy and we're going at it. I just had to give my final two.
Brent was asking earlier if you've lost some LBs.
I would say probably naturally. I mean, the summertime is really busy for me. I play in a softball league. I play in a sand volleyball league. I coach a team that has practice once a week, and I throw like an ungodly amount of pitches. And then we have games on Saturdays, and then I've been walking every morning at 6 a.m.
Does your arm get locked up? Like after throwing all those pitches,
it's definitely sore. I mean, going from throwing 150 pitches on Saturday to playing in a softball league on Sunday, my arm definitely feels it by the time it's all said and done. But it's just the summertime. I just naturally more active, getting a lot of walks in. People were making fun of my cardio last week, so had to make sure.
You need to run those stairs more often, right?
I guess there's a hill by our house that we've been working on a little bit. So
you got some sun on your face too. You look like you're feeling it a little bit right now.
Yeah,
how much golf has been involved in that?
That's also I totally forgot that out. I play golf at least once a week, probably golf 18 to 27 holes every week. So just when the summer time comes around, it's just all the athletics come out.
That's right. All right. Good stuff. Appreciate it as always, Jess. I don't know if you saw, we celebrated our 2-year anniversary yesterday.
I saw that. Can't believe it's already been 2 years.
I know. You were getting some love there on the Champions Lounge. So
really,
in the show here a little bit.
I guess I got to go read it.
Yeah. Good love all the way around. It's been a fun 2 years. Appreciate you being here as always. And thanks to Hannah Hidalgo for joining us earlier today. If you missed that of course will be you can find it wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll have the specific YouTube video up later on of the interview with Hannah Hidalgo as well. Thanks to Ryan. He had a lot of good recruiting information at the start of the show as well. Jesse, put a little lotion on your face.
The nose is a little burnt.
Hydrate. All right. Thanks for being here. Hit the like button, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.
Mailbag.